Hello there, I'm Kim Dodsworth with the Queensland Storyteller. The subject? Football. The roar of the crowds, the adulation of the masses, the highs, the lows, the unrelenting wear and tear on the body. While you're on top, they love you. When you're down, they just don't want to know. Yesterday's heroes, they're just fly-specked photographs on the clubhouse wall. Few writers are better qualified to describe the agony and the ecstasy of top-grade sport than Peter Goldsworthy. His story, The Misogynist, appeared in his own anthology, Archipelagos, published by Angus and Robertson in 1982. He'll never play football again. Strange how the finality of that sentence has come to seem acceptable, even desirable. A year ago, the idea would have been impossible to contemplate. A year ago, his future was assured, an endless avenue. Now it's a dead-end street. 20 years old, and his life's as good as over. Given another season, he probably could have used his name to sell used cars, or real estate. Even an apprenticeship would have helped, but he never bothered. He told me once that he didn't mind sweating his guts out all week, just to forget about it on Saturdays. I remember the feeling myself, that deep, muscular oblivion, high on your own adrenaline and exhaustion. Even in rain there was nothing quite so sweet, except maybe fucking. But the final siren always comes too early in that. When I retired, I was luckier. I had a teaching diploma to fall back on. Not that I would have gone within 10 miles of a school if I could have kept playing. At least on the football field you have no one to beat but yourself. If you can punt a ball 60 metres or run 110 seconds, those are absolute achievements. They can be measured objectively. No one can argue or interpret or criticise. By comparison, everything else seems a bit arbitrary. I remember the first time I watched him play. He was only a kid, a handful of gristle and bone. But even then his class showed through. He could have picked magpies out of trees with a football, and his instinct for possession finding corridors through the thickest wall of opponents. I just stopped playing myself at the time, finally coming to terms with middle age and a pair of treacherous ankles. Just walking on them had become a tightrope act. But I couldn't let go of football completely. I'd invested too much. And I guess I still had vague dreams about a comeback. So I was always down at the club, coaching the junior sides or running for the seniors. It was a cubbyhole to crawl into after work, a refuge from the rest of the world, from mortgages, car payments, all the daily ounces of flesh, and above all, from the wreckage of my marriage. So our paths crossed. I was escaping into the past, and he was escaping into the future. A fugitive from a dead-end childhood in a dead-end housing trust suburb. I was coaching the juniors at the time and got to know him pretty well. I prided myself on knowing all of them pretty well, the flaws in their personalities as well as in their games. I used to pick him up each morning before school with a few of the other lads and take them for a run along the beach. There were always whispers among the others when we got to his house. The front yard looked like a public dump. Even parked across the street we could smell it. The sour stink of the kitchen, the dirty nappies, the filthy carpet. It was a relief to get down to the beach, to pound over the sandhills for a kilometre or two, then dip in the winter sea. Punishing, but exquisitely so. A kind of elemental purification. Just the sea and the sky and the sand. The air clean and transparent. The pain almost desirable. Sometimes we'd sit naked afterwards and yarn, our skin blue with cold, but hot and flushed with exhaustion inside. On the way home I'd drop him off quickly, before his mother had time to waddle out. I couldn't stand her, one of those loud, fat women with moustaches, who look as though someone has taken them by an orifice and blown too hard. Her head a red balloon, her hands inflated gloves, and always shrieking over the heads of half a dozen grubby brats. Strangely enough, I never met his father. Night or morning he was always out, although he must have come home sometimes. There seemed to be an extra mouth to feed each year, and always a pile of unwashed nappies on the porch. So our loneliness drew us together. We'd stay behind after training for extra practice, then watch TV at my place over fish and chips. I remember once he even had me helping with his homework, writing down the answers while he watched a Roadrunner cartoon. And the closer we got, the more responsible I felt for his future. I knew I had to get him out of that house as soon as possible, get him out of the pigsty before he got sat on. He'd already copped one conviction for illegal use, and there was no way he'd play in a grand final from inside Yatala Labour Prison, which was where his future lay without football. I'd no doubt about that. He was always showing me things that had fallen off the backs of trucks, wristwatches, car radios, portable TV sets, gifts from his older brothers. At 15, he decided he'd had enough of the humiliation of school and started working in a local foundry. But I'd still pick him up each morning and on Saturdays. He graduated to the reserves that season, and the next year played his first senior game. That's when the newspapers first discovered him, and the pressure was really on, and that's when his knee received its first mangling. I've heard people say he was too young to be thrown in at the deep end, but that's just an easy way out. Younger players have made it. I remember watching a skinny black kid on TV scoring goals in a World Cup soccer final. Pelé, his name was, a 16-year-old urchin, a poet of leather and muscle. No, that first injury was more plain bad luck than anything. We all carry them sooner or later. Although I will grant that he should have missed a couple more games. There was a lot of pressure from the top at the time. We had to field a winning side. The crowds were dropping off too, and there's nothing like a boy wonder to bring them back. Some of the committee tried to pass the buck to me, said that I should have influenced him to stay out longer. But I'm not swallowing that one. They know what it's like in a league club. Makes the army look like a nursing home. Every injury a self-inflicted wound, every missed game an act of cowardice. Some coaches would bring back capital punishment if they could, or flogging at the very least. Yet even that's too simple. I don't think even the coach could have stopped him playing. As soon as he could weight bear, he was running kilometres every day, feigning complete fitness. We're all the same at that age. No patience. Instant gratification, my wife used to call it. The Saturday crowd's like a drug, a weekly fix. I remember my own first season, sitting around restlessly for hours before each game, full of a kind of painful joy, and always sick, vomiting 1 minute, diarrhea the next, as though the tension could only be released explosively. Every time I slip on my tracksuit, I slip back into those memories, that absolute belief in my own muscle, my own ability, a high that was almost religious, in which anything was suddenly possible, even the bruises enjoyable, and the slow convalescence of Sundays. The rest of the week spent recovering from the previous Saturday or preparing for the next, a week of routine existence. But I'm getting carried away. All I meant to say was that he shattered his kneecap first game back and missed the rest of the season. We worked hard that summer, running every morning, gym sessions and physiotherapy every evening, restoring the hinges in his knee. But it wasn't all work. He'd just turned 18 and there were plenty of pub crawls and plenty of football groupies, even in the cricket season. I encouraged him to screw around to help him relax, no strings attached, and keep the conversation to a minimum was my advice. Like the old wombat joke, it eats roots and leaves. He used to laugh at me, but I've always been uncomfortable talking to women, even my wife. I couldn't even enjoy a good silence with her. It would suddenly become charged with all kinds of hidden significance. Now all I wanted was to scrape hulls and pass in the night. Selfish and loveless maybe, but I'd run out of love to give. I barely had enough left to sustain myself. Of course, he didn't listen. I think he would have married her even if she hadn't got pregnant. She could have talked him into anything. It was tragic. He might as well have married his mother. Because that's who she was going to turn into. A toothless bingo addict with a husband who lived at the pub. I tried to tell him, but his ears were already full. He struggled through the next few seasons, in and out of the side with injuries, but the end was only a matter of time. Watching him play, I could see he wasn't fully fit. He'd put in the occasional brilliant game, but marriage had softened him. He'd lost that lean and hungry edge. His wife wasn't even there when they carried him off that last time. She was probably playing bingo. I was close to telling him it served him right. I was close to screaming at him. That universal nah-nah noise kids make when they know they're right welled in my throat, but wouldn't come out. He was finished. and it just didn't matter anymore. 20 years old, and all he had was a fat wife, a mantelpiece of memories, and a foundry waiting for him in the morning, and every other morning for the next 50 years. I couldn't tell him, and even if I could have, he probably wouldn't have heard. He needed illusions, not truth. Who knows? I lied to him as he limped out of football. Maybe next season. I hope you enjoyed The Misogynist by Peter Goldsworthy. There'll be more brilliant Australian writing this time next week. Until then, I'm Kim Dodsworth, signing off for now.